Hey guys, how are you all doing? This is going to be a pretty quick video. I'm going to do a couple of things. First off, I have to update you on one pick that I'm changing for UFC Fight Night 112. I'm also going to be changing one pick for UFC 213. I've decided on that ahead of time, so I'm going to give you a heads up on that change. Pretty far out from the event, farther out than I would normally let you guys know that I'm changing a pick, or sometimes I don't do it at all. So I wanted to get that out there, and most importantly, I'm going to let you guys know what bets I'm going to be making for UFC Fight Night OKC. This is my first time betting ever. I know I've been promising it for a long time, and I've just put it off, and I regret it. I regret, not doing this when I started my channel. I truly believe that, especially with the strategy I'm going to be taking, that I would have been profitable over the lifetime of my channel. But I'm doing it now, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it. I hope it makes the channel better and bigger, and I plan on being profitable with it. So should be fun, but I hope you guys come along for the ride, and it'll be a good thing for all of us. If you're new to my channel and not familiar with me or my my pick performance, if you're wondering why I feel I have the right to get on here and do this and why I think you should listen to me, well, I'll just say my only credentials are that I was ranked top 400 on UFC Fantasy in 2014, 2015, and 2016. And in 2017, I'm also currently ranked in the top 400. And when I say ranked in the top 400 for those 3 years, that means that I finished within the top 400 each of those 3 years. So those are my credentials. Take them for what they're worth to you, if they're worth anything at all. But yeah, I'm excited about this. So let's do it. But first off, the pick that I'm going to be changing for UFC Fight Night 112 is the main event matchup. I took Lee in my predictions video, and I'm going to be changing to Chiesa. For one thing, Lee, I think, is just way too overconfident in all of his interviews, and all the media stuff he's been doing, and the weigh-in stare down. He just looks way over the top emotional for this, and I think he's really treating Chiesa as a joke. And for a guy who has been knocked out in a fight for being overconfident in the moments leading up to that knockout, that just kind of reinforces in my mind that he's a guy who at times is really a head case, and it really will come back to cost him. Also after that loss to Leonardo Santos and the Efrain Escudero fight, even in that fight that he managed to win, I didn't think he looked that good, and I didn't think he rebounded from the loss all that well. He did get clipped by Escudero in that fight at one point, and since then he's gotten he's had a lot more impressive, dominant performances. But if you just compare their resumes, Chiesa has wins over Beneil Dariush, Jim Miller, and in both fights he was losing early, had his back taken actually by Miller, and then Dariush was just pretty handily outstriking him in the first round. But those two names are bigger than any of the names that Lee has fought. Trinaldo or Mustafayev, definitely Jake Matthews, and Dariush and Miller. Not only are they elite fighters, they're superbly talented grapplers. And I don't think Lee has proven to have that level of grappling. He can take the back. He's good at that. He can choke guys out. But again, the level of competition, Mustafayev and Trinaldo, older guys, not as athletic as Lee. And Chiesa, I just think, is proven to be on a much higher level as far as grappling goes, and the level of names that he's taken out. So that's one thing that factored into me changing my pick. And then I rewatched Lee's fight with Trinaldo, his most recent fight, and it wasn't nearly as dominant a performance as I remembered it being. He lost that first round. Just seemed to kind of be at a size disadvantage against Trinaldo, a strength disadvantage. Trinaldo was able to push him up against the fence a lot, get it on his legs, and Lee really had to expend a lot of energy fending off takedowns. And that just doesn't I don't think that's, having struggled the way he did against Trinaldo, I don't think, he's going to fare well in the same kinds of situations against Chiesa, who's a much bigger fighter. We saw that in the weigh-ins. And, Chiesa is not a great wrestler, but as I already mentioned, I think a much more skilled grappler than Lee. But, he's just tough. And Lee, like I mentioned pretty heavily in my initial prediction, Lee, while his striking has been getting better and he's got a good pocket boxing game, hasn't shown fight-ending power or even the volume to overwhelm a guy and put him away. And without that power and volume, Chiesa is always going to be there. And I almost look at this as like Chiesa has the puncher's chance here, or the grappler's chance. Him being able to secure a takedown and take the back is going to be like his knockout punch, whereas Lee's striking, or it should be a lot technically better than Chiesa's. I think he's going to have to do that over 5 rounds to beat Chiesa, because we just haven't seen the lethality from him on the feet. So, the way he struggled against Trinaldo, against the fence, and just how much time he had to spend defending takedowns, I think Chiesa is going to be able to tie up with him at some point and get him to the ground. I like Chiesa to win by submission. Even on the feet, while Chiesa striking technically is still pretty abysmal, he does have power on occasion. Another point I mentioned before, Drot Masvidal, I believe in the first round of their fight, and that's about the only instance. But Lee being a cocky guy, and we've seen him in cage be really cocky and careless, and his knockout loss to Leonardo Santos. He made himself vulnerable to getting knocked out there, and I think he is just treating Chiesa as a joke coming into this matchup. I think he's super overconfident, and just from all the interviews and media stuff he's been doing, just looks like he doesn't respect Chiesa's ability at all. I think that overconfidence, could give Chiesa the chance to land a shot that puts him down, because Chiesa has that kind of weird power, even though he's technically a very bad striker. So, I'm taking Chiesa because, in summary, he has a track record of being a more elite grappler. He's taken out more elite names. Lee seems to struggle with size, and still struggles on the feet against better strikers, which Case is not. But he himself is not a dangerous striker, and I think that's going to give Chiesa enough time to land the takedown he needs. And also Lee just being very overconfident and very emotional going into this, I think is another factor working against him. So taking Chiesa. So that was a bit of a long-winded explanation there for me changing my pick. But the one other pick, and this will be much quicker to cover, is the Robbie Lawler and Cerrone fight at UFC 213. I took Lawler in my prediction video, and I'll have that as well as the Tough Finale prediction video linked in the description, so check those out. But yeah, I picked Lawler, and basically I said that while both guys are really shop worn and have bad chins and are probably near the end of their careers, I just thought Lawler's style of coming forward, throwing volume, pressing the action, was going to be too much for Cerrone, who struggles with that style against Masvidal and Matt Brown, guys who can just come at him. Rafael dos Anjos, attack the body. We know he's weak there. But just rethinking this matchup, and I did mention in my prediction video that my initial pick when this matchup was announced was Cerrone. Reconsidering the matchup, I just for Lawler to win in the way that I think he will, if he does win, he's got to be the Lawler of old, and meaning a couple years ago when he was champion, the guy who fought Rory McDonald. And I just can't count on him being the same because the guy's just sustained so much damage over the past 3 fights. The McDonald fight, the Condit fight, got hurt in that fight, and just was eating volume all day for 5 rounds in that fight. And then obviously Woodley knocking him out in the first round, I think might have been kind of a nail in the coffin. So I don't trust him being able to come back from that. I think we saw in that Woodley fight, not as confident. Obviously, he had a big technical disadvantage in that fight, big athletic disadvantage as well. But I still think he just didn't quite look like the same guy. And after having been knocked out, after being champion, can't count on him coming back being the same. Throwing his hands with the same confidence or with the same volume, coming as forward as much. I think he's really going to respect Cerrone's power, his lethality on the feet. So that's a big thing, is that I just think Lawler is going to be too far gone at this point. Cerrone, also kind of in the same boat. Hasn't been knocked out with one shot, but has come kind of close. Matt Brown dropped him in their fight. But more than being a chinny guy, maybe a guy who just takes maybe a guy who's more shop worn in terms of his physical body from head to feet, probably has sustained more damage than Lawler, who might be the guy who's taken more damage to his chin. But yeah, like against Masvidal, just getting his ribs pounded on at the end of that fight, and Dos Anjos, who finished him to the body. The guy's definitely been slowing down. He's a lot chinnier as well. But in terms of confidence, I'd have to go with Cerrone to be the more confident guy coming into this match. And I think, while both guys are pretty much at the tail end of their careers. I think Cerrone's just got that little bit more left than got a little bit more left in the tank than Lawler does, and Cerrone will not shy away from a fight, even if he's just getting dominated. Like that Masvidal fight, can barely make it back to his corner, and he answers the bell and still comes back ready to throw down. And I just think Lawler, if he doesn't have that aggression, that volume, he's just going to be too basic. His striking is just going to be too basic to outstrike Cerrone and avoid the knockout head kick for 5 rounds. I mentioned that Condit, he really exposed Lawler technically in their fight with jabs and angles and just a big variety of strikes for that whole fight, and even dropped Lawler a few times. And Cerrone doesn't have that kind of volume or that deep arsenal of strikes that Condit has, but he can find openings. And Lawler's always been very hittable, even when he was champion, even against Hendricks, who has a lot less craft than Cerrone. And I just think Cerrone, while he's going to take damage in this fight and get hit himself, he's got bigger one-shot knockout power, especially with those kicks. And against a guy who's pretty basic, pretty hittable with his striking, I think he's going to capitalize on an opening, land that head kick, and knock Lawler out. So Cerrone by head kick knockout is now my new pick, and I think it'll come definitely not the first round. I'll probably go with the 3rd round knockout, but I think it's definitely going at least 1 round, but that's my new pick. All right, so those predictions took longer than I intended, but now on to the bet. So I'm on Bovada, and by the way, I just want to say that it was a little bit of a frustrating process because I didn't want to use my card that's tied to my checking account. So I thought, the only option, I didn't want to do Bitcoin, so I was going to get a prepaid card, ones that you can pick up at the drugstore. And that's what I did. I got an American Express, and all those cards have cash reload fees and just monthly fees. So I was already feeling kind of, I was put off by that. But then when I went to register the card on Bovada, they didn't take it, even though they take American Express cards, I guess, just not their prepaid cards. So, I had put like $50 on that. That went down the toilet. So I was going to go and get another prepaid Visa card, because on the site, when they rejected the American Express, it said that they suggested to use a net spend Visa debit card. So that's what I was going to go get. But then I had the bright idea, and I don't know why it didn't strike me before, but I used one of my store credit cards. It's a Visa card, and that worked fine. And I think that's a great solution for anyone who doesn't want to use the credit card tied to their checking account, who doesn't want to deal with a prepaid card. Just get a store card, one of those store cards that you can use to make purchases outside of that store. That's what I did. You can have a big credit limit on one of those cards, so it's good for betting. And I'm really happy with that option. So that's what I would recommend to anyone trying to find an option that's going to work for them. But so I'm on Bovada, and I'm tracking on Capper Tech as well as Bet MMA Tips. But the picks that I made for this card, and I realized pretty quickly that my strategy is really not going to depend on the lines at all. Not at all. What I'm doing is trying to pick the bets that I think are going to, be sure payouts. My most confident picks, and that's pretty much it. And the parlay, I think it's going to be a big tool for me going forward. If you're going to be picking your most confident picks, then it makes sense to parlay them. But I am not going to parlay. I would not parlay more than 2 or 3 picks, because then you're just you're increasing the chance that you won't win the parlay. The more, obviously, the more fighters that you're parlaying, you're decreasing your chance of winning, because it only takes one of those fighters losing for the parlay to not work. So I would never parlay more than 2 or 3 fighters in one parlay at a time. So if you watch my prediction video, I wasn't confident in a whole lot in a lot of fights on this card, but there are a couple that I really like. So number 1 is Eric Koch. So I took Eric Koch. That's probably my most confident pick. And like I said here on Bovada, these odds are different from, for these first 2 picks, the odds are pretty similar, maybe slightly different than what they were when I locked them in. One pick has changed pretty drastically from when I'm locked in the pick. But Eric Koch, big favorite, like I said. I don't care about the lines. I'm picking the guys that I think are surefire winners. So Eric Koch, betting on him. My next most confident pick, Marvin Vittori over Miranda, and he's minus 340, as you can see. Looks like he's been trending upward. So I locked in. I think accidentally clicked Esparza there. So Vittori, another big favorite. I did hear some fairly convincing analysis, some people who are actually picking Miranda. Being the more skilled striker, Vittori still looking pretty green and having trouble putting his entire game together. But I don't see Miranda winning, really. I'd say I'm about 75% confident on this pick, but Miranda's ground game, as bad as it's been, getting taken down by Jake Collier and worked over on the ground for a bit. Carlos Jr. getting out wrestled by him for 3 rounds, and especially his most recent fight, getting just foot swept all day long by Chris Camozzi. I don't trust this guy on the ground, and I don't trust him to keep the fight on the feet against a guy who can get it to the ground. And Vittori, we saw a nice submission from him against Alberto Uda, even though, he didn't look great on the feet early on in that fight. But then against Antonio Carlos Jr., nearly turned the tables on him and almost got a ground and pound finish in that second round. So Vittori, I think, just too hungry, too aggressive on the ground with ground and pound and submissions, and Miranda having struggled several times pretty heavily against ground fighters in the past. I like Vittori there. So Vittori and Koch, again, big favorites, but feeling fairly confident in them. And then my third pick, and this one I probably would not have made this pick if I could go over and do this right after I made the pick. I listened to some analysis going the other way that was pretty convincing, and then after that I rewatched some footage on the fighter that I picked, which is Herrig over Justine Kish, and I feel a little more confident about it now, but still, this is the riskiest pick in my parlay, so hopefully it works out. But yeah, I took Herrig, and she was actually at -105, I believe, when I locked the pick. And so obviously, that's unfortunate because she's a much better pick now. So if you pick her now, you get her at +115. Yeah, Kish is a pretty gritty fighter, but I still think pretty unskilled. I think that's fair to say. I think she could have lost both fights to Yoder. Well, maybe not Yoder, but definitely Nina Ansaroff. But in that Yoder fight, got in some tricky spots on the ground and against a really good scrambler and a good submission finisher like Herrig. I think that could spell the end for her. So I still like Herrig. And on the feet, Herrig has looked a lot more technical and improved over the last couple of fights, especially her last fight against Alexa Grasso. Really looking like a more technical striker, using the jab, and Kish just seems, while very gritty and rudimentary, and if she wins, I think it's going to be because she just keeps coming forward. She's able to tie Herrig up in the clinch and just make it a dirty, ugly fight. But I just think skill-wise, Herrig's still better. But definitely I'm feeling not so confident about this one, at least not as confident as Coke and Vittori. So this is the one that could mess it all up. But this is what I did. I parlayed Coke, Vittori, and Herrig. And I did not get odds as good as this, 256. Mine was basically +200. So this would have been a lot better. But yeah, whether this parlay pays off or not, I feel pretty confident, and I'm really excited about the two cards coming up. The Tough 25 finale and UFC 213. I think there are there's some low-hanging fruit on both those cards. I'm really looking forward to both. I'm going to be, employing the same kind of strategy I'm doing here, but I will be back within the next week. I don't know. Maybe I'll wait till the lines come out, or maybe I'll get my picks out ahead of time. But I have some juicy picks, some juicy good strategies for both of those cards that I think are going to be pretty interesting and that you guys will like. And I'm really hoping I'm confident in them, and I think that we're going to make some money on those cards. One thing I want to say, well, you know what? No, I'm going to. I was going to reveal my strategy a little bit for those upcoming cards, but better to just save it for then. Yeah, so that's my parlay. Yeah, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. Follow me on Twitter at MMA Breakdown 0. You can track my performance on Capper Tech and Bet MMA tips. And I'm going to be doing this hopefully for every event. I'm only going to be betting on fights where I truly believe I can make money. So, I'm going to be betting definitely on the next two cards, and hopefully after that as well. So I hope this can be a great thing for me and the channel, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So I'll see you guys soon. Bye.